Steve Addison for the Movements Podcast. Podcast for people who want to multiply disciples and churches everywhere. Today we're going to talk to Ron Surgeon in Memphis, Tennessee about reaching every segment of society in a no-place-left strategy.
And so in Memphis, aiming to see the 1.4 million of the Memphis metro area saturated with multiplying disciples and churches to the fourth generation and beyond. And so we want to see, like all people groups, have an opportunity to respond to the good news of Christ. So that's what I'm doing here within the city, and mobilizing as many people as possible to see the dream come to pass.
Well, tell us how that's unfolded so far.
It's unfolded in multiple ways. And so I think the last time we talked, we were just starting in church planting. I think that was 2014 maybe. And so we multiplied over 20 churches that year, I believe. And we had some attrition in some of the lower income communities. And we had lost about maybe 9 churches because of, people moving to different areas, getting evicted from their places. And so we had the church planting team to move to more sustainable areas and while simultaneously continuing the work in some of those lower income places. And so 2015 rolled around. We continued to form new church planting teams and mobilizing other pre-existing believers, doing House of Peace searches, etc. So we're like in stage 3, I guess, emerging CPM. So we have like several streams, 4 streams of third generation churches, multiple second generation churches, and first generation. We just had a church planted last week at the U of M with a team of football. Excuse me.
What is that?
We just had a church planted last week through the U of M, University of Memphis. Yeah, and it's a third generation church. And so
what do you mean by third generation church?
So we had a first generation church planted through new believers, people who have come to faith in Christ, baptized, gathered together, committed to obeying Jesus and living out the identity of Acts 2:37 through 47. And they sent out leaders, and those people started a new church. And then one of the leaders from that church led a football player to faith, and that football player led one of his friends to faith. And I think 4 more people came to faith as a result of that and were baptized and covenanted together to be church for the college.
So what's a stream?
A stream would be a church that reproduces another, and reproduces another. So we call those streams. So there's an initial group, church that reproduces and multiplies. We have some group with Anglos. We have Hispanic groups. We have an Iranian 3/3 group. We have different segments that are being reached to. We have a church planted among the wealthy segment of society. We have our house church being mobilized among the medical community now. And through that, we started developing shepherding teams because, we were mobilizing apostolic people and realized that that there are people who they want to participate in the kingdom, and they may not be the apostolic type, but they're willing to settle in and do the long-term discipling work.
Okay.
And so we wanted to create what we call shepherding teams, and these are people who will go into the homes and do the long-term discipling work with people that we call yellow lights. And so yellow lights are the people who have heard the good news of Christ, but have not committed to following Jesus, but are interested in learning more. And so he's working through a medical doctor to actually see that happen. So did a L1 training with them.
L1 training, what's that?
Yeah, so level 1 training is when we train people in their identity and teach them how to connect with the lost. So they create maps of relationships, and this could include family, friends, neighbors, co-workers, etc. Just grouping all these people in a map format who may not know the Lord, and then we taught them how to share the good news. And so we use a simple tool we call the 3 circles for this segment, and trained them. And they recruited some believers from some more doctors to train. And those doctors recruited some of their patients who were believers and equipped and mobilized them. And then those patients are leading discovery Bible studies in the homes of people who have come to faith in Jesus but have not yet repented, but are willing to learn more. And so that was our means of involving anyone who had a heart to participate in the kingdom's advancement, and not just only the apostolic and evangelistic guys.
So there's some people that they just want to be out sharing the gospel, finding God-prepared people. Mm-hmm. Then there's probably a larger group that are really happy when those people who are ready to learn more pop up. You bring those who have shepherding gifts to sit down and help them do discovery Bible study while the evangelist, apostle types get on and find some more God-prepared people.
Right, right.
Okay, and how's that working?
Right now it's going good.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're at the beginning stages of that. It's really exciting at this moment because, the goal is total gospel saturation, and we want to see as many people involved in this work as possible. Dr. Carey trained Rachel, and then Rachel then had shared with some patients. The patients were already believers, and so they trained those patients in discovery Bible study, trained those patients in the 3/3 process, cast vision to them on hopes of continuing with other people who are also patients, but have heard the gospel but are not yet willing to learn more. And so that patient, say her name is Veronica. Veronica started meeting with Marsha and her kids in discovery Bible study. We just recruited a Vietnamese church that has committed to 12 months of training and coaching with them. We've recruited multiple Baptist churches within the city and non-denominational churches. And so we asked from the outset that if we could come in and do like a 4-week training with them, and form some teams out of that, and if they would give us 12 to 18 months of coaching. Because we've seen time and time again, like I was training a church in Olive Branch, and we did like 4 weeks of training, and the pastors usually think, well, if we can do this quick training, maybe we can get some. It'll just blow up and happen, like the multiplication will happen, and we know that it doesn't work like that. But they think you can program it, and it'll just. You have chia pet disciples and new churches spreading all over the place. And so we learned from that, from training multiple churches and switching from doing the 3 touches to multiple touches, because it's just not getting to the generational growth that we know is necessary for movement. So throughout the week, we going through the 4 fields each week for 4 weeks, and after that, we assimilate teams, form teams, and then go in and do monthly training and coaching for a period of 12 months. And so we've been experimenting with this in Alabama, and we're just starting to see like great things happen. And And so we feel like that's a model to use across the board.
Give us an example of some of those great things.
Just here's a simple, small example. We've had a team who had it's about 8 of them. They were already being coached by someone else, and they really didn't have good leadership. But in a period of 365 days, they shared the gospel 30 times. And so we go in, we train, we coach, we raise the bar up, and that gospeling went up from 30 times in 365 days to 46 times in 30 days.
Okay.
And so things like that are happening.
Okay. And so it's a strategy to get that level 1 training out, and then sort of leverage the pioneering types and the shepherding types. So you both you're moving forward and you're consolidating at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and the fruit of that has been 3 streams of 3rd generation disciples and churches.
Yeah, and most of that work that I mentioned of that did not came out of one network.
Okay.
And so there are multiple. There's a lot going on. There are multiple networks that are being engaged and mobilized. And one particular network, 2 particular networks are seeing lots of generational growth, and that's where Zach and I are primarily doing our coaching and leading.
And what is it about that network that stands out?
Just the time and investment, and these are people who have been through the process, been through the ringer. They've been with us since we first started aiming for church. I think we first started aiming for church in 2014. And so we had new teams to develop out of that first team. And I just think it's the care, the care, the life on life and truth in the context of relationship. The weekly 3/3 process has helped get to that. Not spreading ourselves too thin. We kind of homed in on doing the House of Peace searches because we were out there a whole lot in 2014, and we kind of drew back on that for 2015 and even to this day. But we have new teams who are just getting started, and they're doing lots of House of Peace searches. But some of these streams that I mentioned before, they're not doing as many House of Peace searches now. But we do have, like for a 3rd generation church, we have a House of Peace search scheduled for April 30th. And the purpose is so we can bring about sustainability to some of these churches. We want to have multiple families meeting together and not just single families.
So families have turned to Christ, and you might just have one family unit that are being discipled and want to be church together, but you're linking them with other families and groups, so you've got a sustainable church.
Yeah, that's what we're aiming for now. That's what we're working on now.
Okay.
Sustainability, leadership development.
So tell me more about sustainability. What was the problem there?
And so we're just looking at in last December we went through a training and to a strategy coordinator training. And so to help us reach the city, reach all the segments of the city, and to think about and the long-term growth, health, reproduction, multiplication, and to minimize attrition.
Okay.
So we have a lot of churches. We have churches that are meeting together, and it's just 5 of them. Some of them they're 3.
3 people.
3 people, and some are 12. But so with the ones with the small numbers, if the household can sustain it, we're trying to see other families engrafted into that. So we're adding to the church and not only just multiplying through it.
Yeah, and is part of that because it's harder to get critical mass and momentum when in an urban setting, people sort of live fairly isolated lives. If it was less urban, the gospel would be spreading faster, and you'd get a sufficient number quicker.
Right.
So you're having to sort of meld people together who have just come to faith.
Yeah.
So that because you're picking up the churches weren't sustaining. People were moving on, and all of a sudden there's nothing left.
Yeah, but and that was more the low income communities, and even in some of the other communities where we're having some of these churches in the third generation, because we had the church that started among like the recovery community. It's a third generation church, but at the same time we have a small group of 4 meeting together. They covenant together to be church, and so we're asking, it's like if somebody dies or somebody moves away or a couple people moves away, what's going to happen with the community? What's going to happen with the church? And we know that if we could have more families added to that, if somebody dies, somebody gets sick, people move away, the church can continue to keep their identity, continue to function together as a family, and reproduce and multiply. And we can look back over the shoulder of time and see it still standing. That's the hope.
Yeah. And what do you think that minimum size is that you want to aim for?
It's kind of hard to say. In certain areas, we're looking at 5, and in other areas, we're looking at 8, and then in other areas, we're looking at 12 to 15. And so
the key thing you're looking for is generational growth. But what you've picked up is if we're forming churches that are too small, they might reproduce for a little while, but then they just may evaporate because there wasn't enough sort of, if someone leaves, all of a sudden we're not viable. Okay. But it's not a huge number. It's just more than a single family unit or a couple of neighbors.
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
Yes.
What other challenges are you're facing, Ron, and what are you learning as you sort of take them on?
Challenges? One challenge is getting, because we have a 3-year, what do you call it? 3-year benchmark. And the 3-year benchmark is to see 4th generation churches and beyond in multiple social segments. And so the challenge is actually doing what it takes to make that happen, to see that come to pass. So we've begun to answer that through, we formed an apostolic coalition to help us face those challenges. And these guys have, they have taken responsibility for each of those social segments. And a few would be like the government and wealthy segment. We just had a Gen Zero church started among the wealthy community.
What's a Gen Zero church?
Gen Zero church is a church that a group of believers who have covenanted together, who were pre-existing.
Okay, so you only start counting when it's a church formed with mostly new believers. That's correct. Gen 1.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
And so that's one segment. We have the immigrants and the low-income community. Those are the other segments. The professional and educational community, the religious. So thinking about the Buddhist, the Hindu community, the Islamic community. So we have blue collar is another social segment, And so we have guys in this apostolic coalition who have taken responsibility for each of those segments, and we're seeing some gen growth in a few of them. And so our 3-year benchmark is to see fourth generation church and beyond in each of those segments to help us assess whether we're actually accomplishing gospel saturation or not.
Okay. And so, because you realize we're not going to reach the whole city if we're just targeting one particular segment. Mm-hmm. Some people need to do that because that's their heart and burden. So you just want to make sure we have a multiplying stream in every segment of society.
Yeah. Yeah. And so we have a guy who's has targeted one area and seen some believers from Muslim background come to faith, and up to the second generation. And now there's a discovery Bible study happening in the Middle East from here through a family.
So what if families come to faith in Memphis, and then the gospel's gone to where they've come from in the Middle East?
Right, correct.
And how did that happen? Did they visit home, or was it over the internet?
It happened over the internet. We had a guy. His name is Ray Sater. He's one of our trainees, and he's a good friend of mine, and a guy that I've invested in and mobilized. He's a part of the Apostolic Coalition, and so he leads an Iranian to faith in Christ, and that guy led his wife to faith, and he also led his cousin, who's also Iranian Muslim background, to faith, and that cousin started a discovery Bible study through the internet with a family member back home.
Wow, that's wonderful. So Memphis to the world.
Right. So we're global and local.
Anything else that really stands out in terms, I'm just thinking, especially in terms of how do we see healthy multiplication happening on multiple streams? What would you say you've learnt over the last year about that? What are the key standouts?
One key thing is to not feel limited to where I should insert myself on my generational map. And so if I'm looking at myself at the top of the generational map, and I'm looking down in one stream that's in its third generation, to feel the freedom to go insert myself into wherever on that map, to do coaching, maybe to redo training and to reinsert DNA.
What's the role of existing churches in all of this?
Well, we're trying to turn, like the church that I'm a part of, trying to turn that into a training center. And so, we have a few people who may not want to do exactly what some of these church planting teams are doing, but they want to see the gospel advance and they want to make disciples. And so we'll call the training by another name and just insert the same resources and equip them in that, so we can just mobilize as many people for the kingdom as possible and turn the church into a training center.
So even if they're not thinking, first of all, about church multiplication, if they just want to make disciples, you're going to go in and train.
Right.
And not fight them on the church planting or the model of church. You just want to help them reach people who are far from God.
Absolutely.
And so you or your team, you're doing that across Memphis.
Yeah, across Memphis, not only Memphis, but in other cities and in other countries as well.
Okay. And let's say, best case scenario, what does a church as a training center look like?
It looks like what I mentioned earlier about the simple 1 month training. Let's come in, equip, take people out into the harvest, form teams, and give us 12 to 18 months of coaching to help get to generational growth. And so as they form teams, we can just go in there and just do some modeling with them, some assisting, and give some oversight, and to launch them out, and stay in touch with them. I'm trusting God for total saturation and to see multiplying disciples in churches, and we want to see just the unreached people groups who are within the city have an opportunity to respond to the good news, to see new churches started among them. We have some, some Yemeni believers gathered together, living out the identity we see in Acts 2:37 through 47, and we just want to see more, So I would like to look back and say I have no more room to work in these regions one day, and to move on somewhere else. And so we'll see what God does. But that's the goal. That's where we're headed. That's what we're working toward. And we know that we can't do that on our own with a few amount of teams. And so we want to mobilize as many churches as possible to join with us and to have a heart that wants to see No Place Left.